Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Satsang podcast. This is Vidal, Maheshananda, where we explore different topics related to yoga, Vedanta, Ayurveda, Jyotish or Vedic astrology, and we reflect on the deeper wisdom traditions that are derived from the great and vast Indian culture. So, this special day brings up the importance of discussing the mind. I wanted to talk about designing a mind for success. It is a term that we hear so often today, the term ego, the mind, the importance of focus, and it's thrown around very loosely without much understanding. And especially when the discussion of emotions come up, I think it's important to understand the mind, its aspects, its potential, and how we can cultivate a mind that leads to success. Now, there is no greater system or tradition that defines the mind and explains the power of the mind and so many different levels and aspects of the mind than yoga. And most specifically, it is the system that we refer to as Raja Yoga, or the yoga that is the royal path, or considered the highest path, because managing the mind isn't easy. Controlling the mind is not easy. And many find it much easier to just go do something good for someone, to just do a good deed and feel good about that. And yes, that's very practical and that's easy, and we relate to that in many aspects of our life, with our families, with our friends. And others find the devotional aspect much easier for them. The dance, the song, the feeling of connecting to nature. All of those are often very practical and much simpler for people than trying to manage this unruly, restless mind. I often refer to the mind like a puppy dog. Unless you train the puppy dog, what is it going to do? It's going to pee. It's going to get into trouble. It's going to poop where it shouldn't. And our minds, especially in this age, are like puppy dogs. They're running around doing things that are so cute and so playful, but yet they get us into trouble. These little aspects of the mind that require training are just not being addressed today. We don't have training in our schools. Kids aren't taught to understand why sports are good for them, why reading and why homework and all of those things. And this is why the yoga, Vedanta culture of India is so powerful and so necessary today for our Western world, because it teaches us to understand the role that the mind has, the role that the heart has, the role that the hand has. Vivekananda, a great Swami, in fact, one of the most influential in bringing Vedanta to the Western world, often referred to this as managing the head, the hand, and the heart. The three go together. The head is our intellectual side, our ego side, what we focus the mind on, all of the impressions, all the things that we take in to the mind are important, and they're important to consider. So that's one aspect. Then we have the heart, the compassionate side, the feeling side, the more sentimental aspect of our life. And this is often opened or expressed through intimate relationships, marriage, or family matters. And lastly is the hand, the role of our actions, the role of our activities, and are the three working together? Is the head, the hand, and the heart working together in a synergistic way to create harmony in our lives? And we have to examine that and explore that. Do my actions link up to the intentions, the mental intentions, or the goals that I have in my life? Many people say, well, I want this, I want that, I want material success, I want a partner in my life. But their actions don't reflect a synchronicity with those mental intentions. So it is something to explore and something to consider. So with respects to the mind, we have to understand that the mind is not separate of the body. When we look at how Western medicine and sort of Western psychology looks at the mind, it is always as a separate entity or some separate aspect of the body. And mostly the mind is correlated to the brain. And so Western medicine has made the brain in a way like God. If the brain does this, this is what will happen. If the brain has this programming, this is what the person's going to be. And we have given too much importance to the brain as a power, rather than understanding the brain as an instrument or a tool of the mind. And the brain is simply programmed by the mind. It's an organ. And it takes programming through its various aspects. And I've discussed this much in my teachings and my book, The Evolution Revolution, how the brain has these three aspects that can be correlated to the earth with the reptilian brain, the mind or the emotion in the emotional brain, and then the sun with the awakened or expanding consciousness in the frontal cerebral cortex. So these three aspects of our brain are just taking orders from the mind. But it's interesting because when we study Vedanta and yoga, we recognize that the mind is within the body. It's not a separate thing. The mind and the body are one entity. And this can be understood by looking at what are called the chakras. And chakras have become a mainstream term, much like the term karma, guru, and mantra. Now chakras is, almost on billboards and advertisements everywhere. And what are the chakras? So the chakras are correlated to elements, and these are the 5 great elements that we know of in Eastern healing traditions, the elements that are correlated to the signs in the zodiac, and the natural elements that we find in nature: earth, soil, right? Water, as we see through rain, oceans, rivers, lakes, all of that. Fire, as we see in light, or the fire that comes through the sun. And air, the air we breathe, the air that plants and nature requires for life and all existence. And lastly, ether, where sound and vibration is transferred. And ether we can mostly see in the recent developments of Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and how satellites basically send signals from way up in space to our planet Earth and help us to link up devices and transfer information, languages, texts, things like that, and communicate. So ether is that realm. So the mind is not separate of the body. The mind and body are one entity, and the mind is a subtler domain than ether. So when you look at the human body, it is made up of levels, with the earth element being at the bottom of the body. The earth element is what governs the elimination, the release of the stool. The water is our urogenital system, our sexual organs. Fire being at the navel as our metabolic process. Air being around the lungs, which is correlated to the heart and how we breathe. And lastly, ether is around the throat, which is the mechanism that we use to speak and produce sounds and sing. So above ether, then we get into the realm of the mind. And the brain is taking these organs. The Sanskrit literature defines the mind as the Antakarana Chatushtaya, meaning that it has 4 aspects. And it divides these 4 aspects as chitta. And we'll come back to chitta again a little further in the satsang, but chitta is basically the unconscious and the subconscious mind. Because if you think about it, a soul keeps coming back into a human body. Why? Because it has desires. It has conditions. It has things that it wants to work out, that it needs to satisfy and complete. And chitta, which is a general term to define all of the mind things, it's kind of like the suitcase of the mind, everything thrown into it. But specifically with respects to these 4 aspects, it is the unconscious and the subconscious mind. The things, the conditions, the patterns that are buried. Hence the term sub or un, right? Relating to underneath, hidden. And all of life is basically an expression of those things. Second aspect is what is referred to as buddhi, which defines an aspect of the mind that is highly intuitive, that has the power to discern and has the power to witness. The power to witness is one of the central techniques or capacities of the mind to observe the world and distinguish oneself, the higher self, the real self. I share this as capital real, R, capital S, self, meaning the true essence of who you are. So when we activate the capacity that the mind has to witness, we begin to observe the world, the objects of the world, like watching a movie, as projections on a screen. And we recognize that we are not those projections. We are not those conditions. We are not emotion and the roles that we play. And so Sakshi is a Sanskrit term that refers to this capacity to inquire, who am I? Am I those things? What is the purpose of my life? We begin to inquire as to what is the mystery of this world? What makes up this world? What is the purpose of human life in this world? And so this witnessing capacity is very important. And some correlate it to reflection. Yes, it involves slowing the mind down. Yes, it involves focusing the mind. And many things are required to get to that state of witnessing. But they ultimately, this power to discern is defined by the word buddhi. And it leads to cultivating an intuitive or an insightful mind. Third aspect is referred to as ahamkara, which is the ego, which is, you could say, the costume that we all wear in our human life, right? We all have roles. I'm a teacher, I'm an author, you could be a plumber, a poet, a mother, many, many things. And so ahamkara is the role that egoism plays, and it's basically an expression, an aspect of the mind that is conditioned. These are the conditionings that one has developed over many, many lives. We have to remember what distinguishes this greater tradition, both in healing and evolution and in the practicality of just keeping your body balanced, is that we have to always remember that many lives have influenced the moments of our life. Many, many experiences in past lives have shaped the moments and the things that we experience in this life. And karma plays a role and all of that. And I've discussed that some in some of our satsangs. So the ego is this aspect that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis. Every day, our egos are colliding, connecting, communicating. When the egos collide, that means there's conflict. That means that collision, that discomfort that we're feeling, that we're criticizing often, oh, he has a big ego, or I don't like this about that person. It's usually very simply understood by looking at your own mind, because that is a reflection of your own conditioning. And what you're not liking is within yourself. Only that person is bringing it up. So, some of us are colliding. Some of us are connecting. These egos are connecting. And there is a synchronicity that occurs when these egos connect. Hey, I like this. Yeah, I like to write. I like to walk in nature. I like to eat vegan and vegetarian food. So we connect on that level, and egos often do, and don't have any collision there, and this creates great friendships. So the ego is there, and then the fourth aspect is manas. This is an aspect of the mind that operates through the senses: sight, smell, sound, touch, and taste. Those instruments, those telephones, if you will, are ways for us to connect and communicate with the living world. So this is crucial to have this understanding of the outer mind, aspect of the mind that works through the senses to connect to the living world. And yes, the brain plays a role here. The brain plays a role in all four of these aspects, because the brain as an organ helps the mind to operate and explore these different levels. Okay. So again, all of these four aspects are within what Raja Yoga refers to as chitta. Okay. But interesting, so with respects to chitta, there are 5 states. And the yogis say that there are these 5 states of the mind. Now, this is referring to the mind in the day-to-day awakened state, right? Or the conscious level, right? When you're conscious, you're talking, you're operating, you're fulfilling your responsibilities and doing all of these things. So within that state, it defines 5 states, 5 levels within your daily life. First is the dull mind. This is the mind that I also refer to as the dead mind. It's not being used. This type of mind is not being exercised or disciplined. It's pretty much dead. Then there's the Shipta. Shipta is the distracted mind. This is a very common feature in many minds that we see today. And this is a mind that lacks the power of attention. And this is really one of the biggest problems that we have today, is this Shipta, this distracted mind, is sending energy into multiple areas, multiple directions. And we often say that prana goes, life force goes where the mind goes. So if you put your mind to a certain task or project, a certain amount of life force energy goes to it depending on your quality of attention or focus or concentration. And I want to get into some of those terms because it's interesting when you break down the linguistics and the different aspects of each word, they correlate to qualities that we need to achieve that. For example, attention. Meaning to expand or to uplift. Tension, right? To tense. So we know, and yogis have taught this, that when we tense our body, we are very focused. There's this wonderful story. I'm just going to paraphrase it real quick, but this young yogi runs into this great sage in the mountains, walking in the Himalayas, And she knew, she could feel his energy, his dignity, this powerful aura that came across. And she's like, who are you? And what are you doing here in this old decrepit temple in the middle of the Himalayas? And he said, look, and he screams, tiger. And she looks over in that direction. She's like, well, wait a minute, where's the tiger? I don't see a tiger. And he responds, well, what did you just do? She said, what do you mean, what did I just do? I looked for the tiger. He says, no, think about it. When I yelled, tiger, what did you do? And she really couldn't get it. He says, you were completely tense. You froze. And more importantly, he says, your mind was completely focused. Your mind became completely one-pointed. So tensing, even though many correlate tension with blocking, constriction, is more defined as stillness. So attention is a term that can be elevated to a higher level to be defined as stillness. We become very still when we're focused at something. We become still in mind and body. That means there's no thoughts passing through the mind. It's clear. And the attention is at that one point, one object. This becomes very powerful teaching. So the distracted mind is the second level, and it's the most common aspect of the awakened mind. The next third level is the vikshipta, which is a partially distracted or partially concentrated mind. And this is also very common, right? A person has some concentration, they listen to a few words that you're saying, and then they're looking in another direction. Or they're looking at their phone. Or they're looking at other people walking around. And this is why it is very difficult to have a real and deep and sincere conversation with someone in a huge environment where there's lots of people, lots of noise, because our mind's taking in those impressions. And it's very easy for anybody, unless they're very advanced, to concentrate and to be present in that conversation. And so, in order to manage this type of level of mind, if you're one of these individuals that are very distracted and you're not seeing your projects through and you're not feeling successful, then explore. How distracted is my mind? How much concentration do I have? Because the quality of our lives is determined by the power of our attention. I'll repeat that. The quality of our lives is determined by the power of our attention. Success, now keep in mind many and most define success as materialism and money in the bank. I will, for the sake of this conversation, include that in defining success, but success is also happiness. Feeling happy, regardless of our external circumstances, regardless of these fluctuations in our life. And so when we're able to focus the mind, we are able to give and direct more life force, prana, energy, into manifesting something and seeing something through. seeing something evolve. And that includes a relationship. Really deepening your connection with someone, improving communication with someone. All of that takes focus. It takes concentration. It takes being mindful and present. And then that goal or that project or whatever it is manifests. And we gain sort of the power of reciprocity because we're putting out, we're giving, and we're throwing this energy outward. Yes, the world is reciprocal. Whatever you put out comes back. And so the power, the law of reciprocity is that you will get back exactly what you give out. So this is why we have to evaluate the level of our mind and how distracted is the mind. And this is where people get so frustrated because they're not seeing their goals being achieved. They're not seeing things accomplished, or they're not making enough money in their view to feel successful or to feel rewarded. And the fourth state is one-pointed, ekagrata. This is a mind that has the power to concentrate at one point and stay there at that one point. This is where meditation comes in. This is where mantra comes in. This is where breath work comes in. All of these techniques that yoga gives are designed to develop this one-pointed mind. When one can establish the mind in this way, great success is attained. Goals are achieved. And one feels the power of reciprocity, the exchange of energy, of give and take. It is sustained by that. It is totally equal. It is like one cord connected, one person holding a cord and another holding a cord, and you can sort of send the signal or pull on it, and the other person feels that pull. So it's equal, always. What we're doing with that one-pointed mind is establishing and getting to a state of being able to control the mind. Use the mind for our life, for anything. You have basically control over the mind, over your senses. Primarily, that's where it begins. So you can decide, look, I've eaten enough. I'm not going to have another piece of dessert. And you control and say, no, I'm going to stop here. You can control thoughts with this state of mind, niruddha. One can control energy and the power of the mind to gain an insight. And those insights become subtle feelings. Some refer to these as premonitions or insights or intuition. And this is a very, very high level, and it requires, so you know, years and years and years of regular daily sadhana, spiritual practice and discipline to establish this state of mind. You know, how is it that these yogis have always, for thousands of years, they leave the busier villages and cities and they go into the forests, up into the caves. And in those times, and even today actually, it's cold in the Himalayas. The Himalayan region is the largest in the world. It's vast. It has the highest mountain in the world and many others, like Everest. And they go up into these areas to work on the power of their mind, cultivate that one-pointedness, and develop a mind that's fully under their control. Temperatures don't bother them anymore. Ups and downs, news, all of the junk that passes through these social media apps. I mean, it's truly junk. It's truly irrelevant. It's not relevant to our life. It doesn't have much importance. And so we have to have some discipline over how we use these devices. And meanwhile, these companies are worth billions of dollars because so many distracted minds. They're making money off of distracted minds. And sadly, the quality of our lives is in detriment. The quality of our life is lost because the mind is always looking for something faster, something more. It's never satisfied. It's stuck on the wheel of samsara, chasing one desire after the next, over and over and over again. This can be said about athletes. Great athletes have great focus, great mind-body relationship. So I want to explore with you understanding the states of consciousness, and by learning more about the mind and all of these aspects, it will help you to develop a mind that leads you to success. So there are 4 basic states of consciousness, okay? These are the unconscious mind and the subconscious mind that I referred to earlier, where Raja Yoga defines the mind in these 4 aspects. And Chitta is the mind in its unconscious and subconscious aspect, where all our conditioning is stored. And this is an aspect of the mind that influences very robotic behavior. Right? People do things and they don't know why they're doing them. I remember walking into a yoga studio here in my neighborhood, and I asked the woman some questions about the studio. How long has it been around, and who owns it, and what is the sort of the theme of this studio, and she says, I don't know any of that. I just work here. And I thought to myself, isn't that interesting that a center called, saying that they are a yoga center, here is a woman that has no mindfulness, no awareness about who she's working for, what is the purpose or the sort of theme of this yoga studio. She says, this is just my job. And I got that sense, that very primal sense. She's got to work. She just needs the money, and that's all that's important to her. She's operating from this very unconscious place. Very robotic nature. Right? And this unconscious mind creates emotional patterning. Seeing the way people today react to certain circumstances, to certain words, to certain things that they're experiencing in their life, in their work, this emotion comes up, right? And they react to that experience that's coming from the unconscious mind, and they don't know why they're experiencing those things. They don't know why they're feeling angry about this or afraid. Shouldn't we ask the question, why am I feeling that way? Where is that emotion coming from? And begin this process? Or is my life just about playing with the kids, feeding the kids? No, I gotta make money. These are the things that are important. That's what I gotta do. That's my life. But what this state of mind doesn't realize, you've done this thousands and thousands and thousands of times. In this life and in many other lives. You're in the robot, you're in the uniform, and you have not broken or jumped off of the wheel of this patterning. But perhaps an experience may come along, something that will shatter your consciousness and open your heart to a deeper purpose, to a higher intention in this life. Second state, subconscious. The subconscious mind, which we experience in the dream state, and those that are dreaming, contains vasanas, what are referred to as subtle desires. These are desires that many of us have. We all have these subtle desires, but they haven't come to the surface yet. They haven't manifested yet. They're slowly coming up. And these we experience as subtle feelings. You don't know why you're having that feeling, but it's coming from a prior conditioning. Now, don't confuse feeling with intuition. That's a higher feeling. That's a purified feeling that isn't entangled in conditioning of the mind. That's a direct insight. This feeling is referred to as Shuddha Bhavana. And it's sentimental. It's the sentiments that we have around people, places, and things. And this is correlated to the subconscious mind. Then we have the conscious state, right? We're listening to this podcast. We are feeling hungry. We are going to meet up with a friend later. This is the state that we have to experience the living world, the material world. This realm is defined in yoga as the Bhuloka, kindergarten. We're all here. So that's the conscious state. And both the unconscious and the subconscious mind play out in our conscious life. They are the conditioning, they are the grooves in the mind that the brain uses to kind of display those qualities into the human life. Okay? And then lastly, which is the highest state of consciousness, which is referred to as the superconscious state. And yoga has defined this as enlightenment. We hear this term, samadhi, and it is when the mind is fully absorbed in pure consciousness, that vibrational field that sustains all of the world and all of living existence. Your mind becomes unified with that. It has no division. It doesn't feel tied or bound to the individual body. It has transcended that. And meditation can be used to help us transcend the limited state of I am this body. I am the baker. I am the CEO of the company. Right? I am this emotion. And meditation helps us to move to this supermind, or what Aurobindo referred to as the supramind. A mind that is fully in control of the living world. It can do whatever it pleases, but it also has the capacity to enjoy the inner world, not just the outer world. And this is the difference between the unconscious and the subconscious mind, or the mind that is dull and distracted. It just dwells in the outer world. But what we don't realize is that there are inner layers to consciousness that are hidden within our own mind-body complex, and that are actually portals and doorways into great vistas, vast dimensions that are beyond time and space, beyond the limitations of human life. And do you know what the secret is to moving in this evolutionary direction? The secret sadhana, I call it, is sleep. Is how we sleep. How we enter our sleep. How we enjoy, or what is the experience of our sleep. It is a primary aspect of human life, right? Every day we sleep. It is where we rest the physical body, and all of the organs are shut down except the heart, the one thing that sustains the heart and allows it to keep breathing while we go into this subconscious or sleep state, is ojas. Is we're borrowing that consciousness from God. We're borrowing that life force from God, so that the body can rest and we can be given an opportunity to explore these domains where our hidden conditions, our subtle desires, our seed tendencies, these are referred to in Sanskrit literature as samskara, so that we can begin to undo our robotic nature, so that we can begin to go beyond and overcome our emotional patterning and be free. That is the purpose of our life. That is our human potential, is to be free of this world and free of any thought that binds us to think that we need anything outside of us to have success, to have love. We are love. That is our true nature. We are peace. That is our true nature. And that will conclude our satsanga on designing a mind for success. So I want all of you to begin to explore this and to begin to study your mind by practicing meditation. If you're not ready to sit down to meditate and be still and just observe your breath, then I suggest that you begin to have one conversation at a time with one person, to take on a task, one task at a time, rather than multitasking. Make a note, I want to change this, and work on that one thing. until it's completed. And so do things like walk in a mindful way. Walk in nature without your phone. Walk slowly. Listen to the birds. Connect with the trees. Take time to really be in those elements. Right? Exercise is also very good for this. Especially swimming, where one gets into a repetitive pattern and is just feeling the arms and the strokes and the breath. Right? Walking is very powerful. Any activity that allows your mind and body to find synergy is very helpful and can be considered a prerequisite to classic meditation or traditional meditation, where one sits and spine is straight and they stay very, very still. So cooking can be a form of meditation. Writing can be a form of meditation. Reading. And so these are all activities that keep the mind focused, one-pointed. That one-pointedness leads to more and more control over the mind, control over the senses, control over our emotions. You see where all of this is leading. So start, and even Hatha Yoga, postural yoga is very good. This is a good way to slow the mind. So if you're feeling like you have that muda mind, that dull mind, and it's hard to get motivated, then you need community support. You need an environment that's going to inspire you to get out of that dull and dark place. Connect and get into Sangha. Because that environment is more powerful than you are in the beginning. And that environment, if it's the environment of good quality that's helping you to evolve and has those people in it that are doing the things that you want to do, then it's a great environment. It supports you. And it uplifts you. So, on my next Satsanga podcast, I will cover this topic of what is good sleep and how can we heal and evolve and get to that control, that very powerful mind that can lead us to superconsciousness. And we will explore that. So I want to thank you all for listening. Namaste. Remember, you are the light of pure consciousness. You are filled with love, and your true essence is peace. Namaste. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace.